The night was supposed to mean nothing. Eli Shen had not planned to be at the Hartwell Gala. He was there as a substitute, standing in for his sick business partner, holding a glass of sparkling water he hadn't touched, watching the room like someone counting exits. He was good at that. Watching, calculating, surviving. At 28, Eli ran Shen Creative, a mid-sized brand consulting firm that had been quietly stealing clients from the biggest agencies in the city. He had built it from nothing. No family money, no connections, just sharp instincts and the kind of stubbornness that people called ambition when they liked you and arrogance when they didn't. He didn't care which word they used. What he did not expect was Leon Ashford. Leon was everything Eli was not, at least on the surface. Old money, perfect jaw, the kind of man who walked into a room and made it smaller just by being in it. He was the CEO of Ashford Group, the corporation that had been trying to absorb 3 of Eli's biggest clients for the past year. They had never met in person, only in boardrooms through lawyers, or in trades and industry papers where their names kept appearing in the same sentences, always competing, never cooperating. Their eyes met across the ballroom at 9:47 p.m. Eli looked away first. It meant nothing. By 10:15, they were arguing near the terrace about a client pitch that had gone public that morning. Leon said Shen Creative had used a leaked brief. Eli said Ashford Group had simply lost, and losing always needed an excuse. The words were sharp. The air between them was sharper. By 11:30, the argument had moved somewhere quieter. By midnight, it had stopped being an argument entirely. Eli left before sunrise. He told himself it had been a moment of weakness, stress, wine he shouldn't have accepted, the way Leon had looked at him in the dark like he was something worth understanding. He pushed it down, locked it behind the same wall he kept everything personal behind. He had a company to run. He had a rival to beat. He didn't think about that night again. Not seriously. Not until 3 weeks later when he was sitting in his doctor's office, hearing words that rearranged everything he thought he knew about his own body, his own future, his own carefully constructed life. Pregnant. Eli sat very still for a long time. Then he asked the doctor to repeat it. Then he sat still again. Outside the window, the city moved like nothing had changed. Cabs and clouds and people with ordinary problems. Eli pressed one hand flat against his stomach, still completely flat, completely unremarkable, and thought about a man with a sharp jaw and colder eyes, and a name he had been trying to stop thinking about. Leon Ashford. He was keeping this secret. He had to.
Leon Ashford did not believe in loose ends. Every deal he made was clean, every contract airtight, every room he entered he left on his own terms. That was how he had run Ashford Group for 6 years, with precision, patience, and zero tolerance for unresolved variables. Eli Shen had become an unresolved variable. It wasn't the night itself that bothered him, or so he told himself. It was the silence after. Eli had left without a word, without a note, and then reappeared in the industry exactly as before. Sharp-tongued in press releases, aggressive in client pitches, completely unreachable. No acknowledgement, no awkwardness, nothing. Like it hadn't happened. Leon found that more irritating than he could logically explain. He saw Eli for the first time since the gala at the Vance Media quarterly meeting, a neutral ground event both their firms attended. Eli walked in 7 minutes late, sat 2 seats away, and opened his laptop without once looking in Leon's direction. Leon watched him for exactly 4 seconds before looking away. He watched him again 12 minutes later and stopped counting after that. Something was different. He couldn't name it. Eli was as composed as ever, as cutting in the Q&A session, as immovable as always. But there was something careful about the way he held himself, something that hadn't been there before, a quiet guardedness that went beyond Eli's usual armor. After the meeting, Leon did something he didn't normally do. He waited. "You've been avoiding the greenfield pitch," he said when Eli passed him in the corridor. "It was business, a safe angle. Your firm pulled out last week. Eli Shen Creative doesn't have scheduling conflicts. You would have found a way." Leon fell into step beside him. So what was the real reason? Eli stopped then, turned just enough to look at him, those steady, unreadable eyes. "Maybe I just didn't want the client." "You always want the client." A pause. Something moved behind Eli's eyes, fast, controlled, gone. "People change, Ashford. Try to keep up." He walked away. Leon's assistant, Priya, flagged something 2 days later, a small thing, barely worth mentioning. Eli's firm had quietly declined 2 high-travel projects this quarter, had also rescheduled a speaking event, had stopped attending the late-night industry dinners he used to dominate. "You're tracking Eli Shen's schedule?" Leon asked, keeping his voice neutral. Priya blinked. "You asked me to monitor competitor movements." "Right." He looked at the file she had handed him. "Leave it with me." He told himself it was competitive intelligence. He looked at the file 3 more times that afternoon. That evening, Leon sat in his office on the 40th floor and stared at the city without really seeing it. Something was off. His instincts, the same ones that had kept him ahead of every competitor for a decade, were buzzing with a frequency he didn't have a name for yet. He pulled up Eli's professional profile, then his recent public appearances, then, without fully deciding to, the date of the gala. He counted forward on the calendar. He stopped. "No," he thought, "that would be—" He closed the laptop, but he didn't stop thinking.
The Aldrin Tower meeting had been scheduled for 45 minutes. It ran over by 10 because Eli was thorough. He always was. He walked the Aldrin board through 3 years of brand positioning data with the kind of focused calm that made rooms quiet and pens move. Leon watched from the opposite side of the table as one of the board members, a senior woman named Director Cho, leaned forward and said, "Mr. Shen, you should sit. You've been standing for 40 minutes." Eli almost deflected. Leon could see him about to say, "I'm fine," in that clipped way he said everything. Instead, Eli sat. A small thing. It meant nothing. Except that Eli Shen did not sit during presentations. Leon had watched him work before, at joint panels, at shared pitches, at 2 years' worth of industry events. He stood, he moved, he owned the floor. The buzzing in Leon's chest sharpened. The break came at 2:15. Leon stepped into the corridor and almost walked into Eli, who was standing near the window at the end of the hall, one hand resting low against his side, looking out at the city with an expression Leon had never seen on him before. Not the sharp professional mask, not the cool dismissal he used like a weapon. Something quieter, something private. Eli heard him and turned. The mask came back instantly, but for 1/2 second, 1 fraction of a moment, it hadn't been there. Leon stopped. "Ashford," Eli's voice was even. "The break is 15 minutes. Leon didn't respond right away. He was looking at Eli, really looking, and his mind was doing the thing it did when a deal started adding up in ways that changed everything. Connecting, calculating, arriving. The careful posture, the skipped events, the way he'd sat down, the way his hand had rested just now against his own stomach without him seeming to realize it. The date of the gala counted forward on a calendar he'd closed and couldn't stop thinking about. "Eli," he said. His voice came out quieter than he intended. "Don't." The word was fast, sharp as a blade. Eli's eyes met his, and in them was something Leon had never once seen there before. Not in 2 years of rivalry, not in negotiations, not in arguments, not in any room they'd ever shared. Fear. Real fear, quickly buried, but there. The world seemed to slow down around Leon Ashford. The corridor, the distant sound of voices from the boardroom, the gray afternoon light through the glass, all of it became background noise. Because the math was finished now. The variable had resolved itself. He knew. He opened his mouth, closed it. He froze. Leon Ashford, who had never been caught without words in his adult life, stood in a corporate hallway and could not speak. Eli straightened, lifted his chin, eyes like closed doors. "We should go back in," he said quietly, and walked past Leon without looking at him. Leon stood there for a long moment after he was gone. Then he pressed one hand against the cold glass of the window and tried to remember how to breathe.
Leon didn't say anything for 5 days. Eli waited for it. The phone call, the legal letter, the ambush outside a meeting. Something cold and corporate. Something that could be handled with lawyers and clean language, and the kind of distance that protected everyone. Nothing came. That was somehow worse. On the 6th day, Leon showed up at Shen Creative. No assistant, no warning. He stood in the lobby in a dark coat, looking out of place in the way that only truly powerful people could, like the building hadn't been designed for him, but he'd decided to occupy it anyway. Eli's receptionist called upstairs with barely concealed panic. Eli came down himself. He wasn't going to let this happen in his office, near his team, inside the space he'd built. He met Leon in the lobby and kept his voice low. "You don't have an appointment." "No." Leon looked at him steadily. "Can we talk?" "Eli." The way he said the name stopped something in Eli's chest. Not soft. Leon Ashford didn't do soft, but careful, deliberate, like he'd practiced it. "Outside," Eli said. 5 minutes. They stood in the small plaza beside the building. Foot traffic moved around them. Neither of them looked at it. "I'm not here to make demands," Leon said. Eli kept his eyes forward. "Then why are you here?" "Because I've spent 5 days trying to figure out what the right thing is." A pause. "And I'm not sure I know, but I know that disappearing isn't it." Something moved in Eli's chest. He pressed it down. "This is my situation. I've made my decisions. You don't need to be involved." "It's not just your situation. Biologically, technically, minimally." "Eli," Leon turned to look at him, "I'm not trying to take anything from you. I'm not here with conditions. I just—" He stopped. For a man who always had the next sentence ready, the pause was enormous. "I didn't know that I would care this much. I didn't expect to, but I do." Eli finally looked at him. This was the thing about Leon that Eli had never been prepared for, not during the gala, not in any of the rooms they'd shared since. Up close, without the rivalry as a buffer, he was just a man, uncertain in this moment, trying. Eli hated how much harder that made everything. "I'm not going to make decisions out of fear
or guilt, or because you showed up looking—" He stopped himself. "I need time." Leon nodded slowly. "Okay? That's it? Okay? What do you want me to say?" Something in Leon's expression cracked open just slightly. "Tell me what you need, and I'll do it." Eli looked at him for a long moment. The wall inside his chest, the one he'd built over years and years of doing everything alone, developed a hairline fracture. Small, almost invisible, but there. "Go home, Leon," he said. "I'll call you." And this time, for the first time, he didn't walk away. He waited until Leon left first.
The story broke on a Thursday morning. Eli saw it on his phone before he'd even gotten out of bed, a gossip industry blog with just enough real details to confirm someone had talked. Shen Creative's CEO, a pregnancy, a powerful secret, and a name no one's saying yet. The comments were already moving. The name they weren't saying yet would be said by noon. He sat up, set his phone face down, and breathed. Then he got up and went to work, because that was what he did. By 10 a.m., 3 board members from one of his biggest accounts had called requesting a clarity meeting. A competitor had already sent a veiled press quote about leadership stability. His assistant had forwarded 47 media requests. Eli handled all of it with a calm that frightened even him. What he didn't expect was Leon. Leon called at 10:43. Eli let it ring. Leon called again at 10:44. Eli picked up. "I've seen it," he said before Leon could speak. "I'm issuing a statement." Leon's voice was controlled, but underneath it was an edge, not at Eli, but at the situation, at whoever had leaked it. "I'm putting my name in it, beside yours." Eli went very still. "Leon." "Eli, they're going to make you the story. I'm not going to let that happen." "I don't need you to protect me." "I know you don't." A beat, quiet, sincere. "I'm not doing it because you need it. I'm doing it because it's right, because it's true, and because I'm not the kind of person who lets someone stand alone when they don't have to." Eli stared at his desk, at the city outside his window, at everything he'd built alone. "If you do this," he said slowly, "there's no taking it back." "I know. Your board will have questions. The press will build a story whether we give them one or not. Our companies are rivals. That alone will keep this going for months. I know all of that." "Then why?" "Because in that hallway," Leon said, voice dropping to something quieter and completely unguarded, "you were scared, and you still walked back into that room and finished the presentation, and I've never admired anyone more in my life than I admired you in that moment." Eli closed his eyes. The wall cracked again, wider this time. "Make the statement," he said finally. Leon's statement went out at 11:30 a.m. It was short, clean, and left nothing hidden. He confirmed the connection. He used Eli's name with full respect. He called Eli his equal in every professional sense and said that whatever came next, they would face it together on their own terms, not the press's. The industry exploded. Eli read it 3 times. Then he did something he hadn't done since he was 22 years old, just starting out, sitting in an empty office with no clients and a company name he'd chosen himself. He cried, quietly, alone, just for a minute. Then he straightened up and called Leon back.
3 months later. The press had moved on to other stories, as it always did. The industry had recalibrated. Their boards had asked hard questions and received honest answers. Some clients had paused. Most had stayed. 2 new ones had come specifically because of the statement. People, it turned out, who had appreciated something real in a world full of polished performance. Life had adjusted around the truth, the way life always did when you stopped fighting it. Eli was 5 months along now. He still ran Shen Creative with the same edge, the same sharp intelligence, the same refusal to accept second best from himself or his team. He had simply also started answering Leon's calls before the second ring. Small change. Significant change. They had dinner twice a week, always somewhere quiet. Leon had learned fast that Eli didn't want to be seen as a story, and so he never put him in places that would make him one. They talked about work, which was comfortable. They talked about the future, which was less comfortable and more necessary. They disagreed constantly and enjoyably about interior design choices for the room Eli was slowly, privately making space for. "You don't have to like the color gray," Leon said one evening over takeout on Eli's couch, a level of domestic access Eli had granted him in stages, like security clearance. "It's not gray, it's slate. It is not the same thing. Eli." "Leon." Eli looked at him with complete patience. "I have been right about design for 10 years. You have been right about logistics. Respect the boundary." Leon laughed, an unguarded, uncalculated laugh that still surprised Eli every time it happened. This man who had once been only sharp edges and strategy, laughing on his couch about paint colors. What a strange and lucky thing, Eli thought, before he could stop himself. They weren't rushing. Eli didn't do things he hadn't thought through, and Leon had learned to love that about him instead of pushing against it. What they had was honest, not perfect, not simple, but honest, built carefully by two people who had both spent years building things alone. On a quiet Sunday, Leon arrived with groceries and let himself in with a key Eli had given him the week before. He found Eli at his desk, working, always working, with one hand resting absently on the curve of his stomach and an expression on his face that Leon had never seen anywhere else. Peaceful, unguarded. He stood in the doorway for a moment without speaking. Eli looked up. "You're staring." "I'm worth looking at." Eli's expression shifted, that slight softening he still tried to hide and never quite managed with Leon anymore. "Stop being like that." "Like what?" "Like someone who means things." Leon crossed the room, set the groceries down, sat beside him. "I do mean things." "I know," Eli said quietly, and leaned, just slightly, into him. Outside, the city hummed with ordinary life. Inside, two people who had spent years as rivals sat together and made room for something neither of them had planned, and both of them were keeping.
If you enjoyed this story, like, comment, and subscribe to get new BL stories every week.